here we go. This is a play called Necessary Sacrifices by Richard Hellesen, an adaptation of a play that was written for the Ford Theater. Silence your phones. Oh, I've seen so many. It's a hot August day at the White House in Washington, D.C. The Civil War has been going on for more than 2 years. A little more than a month ago, the Union Army prevailed at Gettysburg. In January, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Today, Fredrick Douglass, a former slave, now a free man, dropped by the White House. To his surprise, he has been given an audience with President Lincoln.
Mr. President.
Well, good morning.
Your Excellency, my name is...
Fredrick Douglass. Yes, sir, I've had a great deal about you. But then I imagine you've heard a thing or two about me, so we're even. It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Douglass.
Forgive me, I don't have an appointment.
Not many do. And you did send your card in.
But yes, but there's a long line to see you.
I know. Constant swarm. Buzz, buzz. I thought about moving my office to a smallpox hospital. But they just get vaccinated and come in anyway. No, sir. This is a pleasure. Unexpected though it may be. Alas, I keep hoping for better results.
That's why I prefer it.
Well, please come in. Have you traveled far?
Oh yes. I live in Rochester.
That's quite a journey. Come to see just me.
I had others to see as well, and it's my first time in this city, so...
It is. Well, what do you think?
It's magnificent.
Nonsense. It's a mess. They're soldiers, wounded and whole. They're drunks. They're drunk soldiers. There are camps full of contraband.
Freed slaves.
Yes, freed slaves. There are diseases, wars, bad water. It's going to be hotter today than yesterday. Mind you, you've come in August, which is unbearable. The rest of the year, it's merely miserable or insufferable. Coffee's here if you'd like some.
Forgive me, but don't you find this a bit awkward?
I'm not fond of the excellency part. That's just a little bit stiff.
That's not what I meant.
You mean because of your race. You're not the first Negro to set foot in this office, Mr. Douglass. I've had Bishop Payne of the AME Church. I had a whole delegation of colored men from this city for a very fine conversation.
Yeah, I read about that.
You might even see Mr. Johnson about. Colored fella. Came with me from Springfield. Gives me a shave now and then. About the only man in Washington I'd trust with my neck and a razor. And Mrs. Keckley, who attends Mrs. Lincoln.
I'm glad we're not strangers to you.
Exactly. So, if you are the Fredrick Douglass I presume you to be, I expect your race has something to do with why you're here. I don't find that a bit awkward if you don't.
Even so, you've asked if I've traveled far. My first thought was that 5 miles from this spot is the state where I was enslaved. The distance between that life and the one and this one hangs on my mind a bit. That's all.
You are one of the most meritorious men in the country, Mr. Douglass. So, I'd be pleased if you just take a seat and tell me what I can do for you.
I feel I ought to thank you first.
That's an awful way to begin. I haven't done anything.
Your proclamation, Excellency. Emancipation. I was in Boston that night. If you could have seen the crowd that waited for the news, and we were not all colored either. I'd venture to say we felt of one race. And when the words finally came through on the telegraph, are, and henceforth shall be free, it was like lightning.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
Thousands upon thousands rejoicing, so loud that I think many missed the thunder that followed. And they shall be received into the armed services of the United States. On the strength of your words, I began recruiting colored soldiers. You open the door, and they march through, because they know this is our time.
Mr. Douglas,
They know that a black man can give blows as well as take them. They know that an eagle on our buttons and a musket in our hands means liberty. They know that if we love our country, we must rise up in the dignity of our manhood.
Mr. Douglas.
Excellency.
I'm sold. Where do I sign?
I believe you're already in.
And for the duration. You don't need to convince me. Your volunteers are absolutely crucial to winning this war. I want 100,000 more. As soon as I can get them. The enemy can be licked. Well, they should have been licked a month ago after Gettysburg. If I'd have gone up there, I could have licked them myself. But we'll get them, and the Negro troops will be in on the getting.
Then you need to know something, sir.
That doesn't sound good.
Those men came because I promised them, on my honor, and out of faith in you, that they would be treated like soldiers, like any others, not as Negroes who happen to wear a blue uniform.
And you believe that they are not?
I know they are not. When I plead for recruits, I want to do it with all my heart, without qualifications. I cannot do that anymore. Therefore, I can no longer recruit them into the United States Colored Volunteers.
You mean you will not?
I will not.
I see.
Don't mistake me. The black man can fight and fight with a vengeance. Who would be free themselves must strike the blow. And I have looked into the eyes of men who are about to sign their lives away. And I know that practicalities also matter.
And your particulars. You may speak freely, Mr. Douglas. I doubt it'll be the worst thing I've heard in this room.
There must be no distinction in the Union Army in matters of pay or conditions. If a Negro leaves his wife and children and endures all the perils and hardships of war, he must have the same pay as white soldiers, not the half wages paid now.
But it's more than half, isn't it?
White soldiers make $13 a month. Colored soldiers make $7. They were intended to build forts and man arsenals. Now they are fighting and dying, but the pay they send home is the same.
Congress sets the wages for the troops, Mr. Douglas, not me.
And you accept that?
I have practicalities of my own to deal with, sir. What else?
I also promised them they would see colored officers, colonels, even generals.
Your largesse is vast, I must say.
It's incentive, and none is given to the ambition of colored soldiers. No matter their skill or courage, they must remain privates or non-commissioned officers. Anyone who performs uncommon acts of leadership or bravery should be rewarded with distinction and promotion, regardless of color.
Officers are commissioned by the War Department.
But you sign those commissions.
Only on recommendation.
You must have some influence in these matters. You're the president.
Yes, well, talk to my cabinet. I'm merely the lead mule on a very unruly team.
I simply want to know what you believe is right, not why someone else is responsible.
Now, let me ask you something. If what you say is true...
It is.
Let me finish. If the policies you describe gain me nothing, if in fact they discourage colored men from coming in, and enlisting at the moment I need the most, why should I let these policies continue?
My question exactly.
Now then, you want to know my point of view? Here it is. What I see is the Secretary of War Mr. Stanton, who sits here in meetings, demanding larger and better armies, the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Stanton, who sits here in meetings, trying to figure out how to pay for them, the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Chase, sits here. Old Neptune, he sits over there, second guessing half of what I do. The Attorney General is there, second guessing the other half. And the only thing that keeps them all together is a determination to win this war. Now, what possible reason would a room full of disagreeable old white men have to keep Negroes from volunteering?
I have no idea.
I've had to lead some witnesses in my time, but you, sir, while you may rejoice at colored troops marching through northern cities, not everyone cheers at the sight of a large group of black men with guns in their hands, let alone want to be in their company. Now I need 500,000 troops, but only 100,000 will be Negroes. So, I ask you again.
You're having trouble recruiting white soldiers.
I have to look at it from all sides. And if colored soldiers taking lesser pay than white is required so that all may serve, then that's a prejudice I must accept.
I know that prejudice, Excellency. I've known it since my first job as a free man.
And what was that?
I was hired at a shipyard in New Bedford, loading barrels of whale oil and then caulking ships. My own master for the first time in my life. And every white man in the yard threatened to quit unless I took half wages. That's when I learned you turn a poor white man against a poor black man over scarce wages, you've made slaves of both of them. So I find it hard to accept that the government of the United States is no better than the owner of a shipyard in New Bedford 25 years ago.
Was he fighting a war?
That's not fair.
None of this is fair. If it were, my God, I'd put out a call for troops. And you know what I get? Draft riots. Working men who don't want to go, turning their own streets into battlefields. You know about New York City. God in heaven, 100 people killed.
Most of them Negroes, black men and women, hung from lampposts, a colored orphanage burned to the ground.
That is exactly my point. White men looking for someone to blame, and then they turn their rage on the Negro. Every draft call, a barrel of gunpowder, and telling those conscripts that they will be on the same footing as black men is striking the match. I do not say that that is right or just, but I will not, in the middle of a civil war, turn the recruiting of any troops, black or white, into dickering over the price of a horse. I am sorry.
And promotions?
You can take that up with Secretary Stanton if you're so inclined. His office is across the way.
I know. I've just come from there. As I said, others to see.
Well, not new at this after all, are you? Start a little lower down the ladder, and if you don't like that run.
Oh dear, no disrespect intended.
None taken. How is the Secretary this sweltering morning?
Sweltering.
I doubt the sight of you cooled him down much.
Let's just say politeness is not one of his weaknesses.
To say the least. Did you tell him what you're telling me?
In so many words.
Let me guess. I personally support it, but I can't help you.
How did you know?
That's the second most popular phrase in Washington after, "I'll have another." Don't take it personally. Stanton frequently tells me to go to hell in a way that sounds like he's doing me a favor, everything possible to keep me out of it.
And you?
I make him think I'm going, then I disappoint him.
What I mean is, suppose a colored officer was recommended.
To be perfectly frank, that issue came up in Congress not long ago. One of the members, a union supporter, mind you, stood up in the People's House and vigorously objected to the idea of white troops following Colonel Sambo. I'd say there's a ways to go.
But if such a thing were to happen, would you put your name to that, like you did emancipation?
Well, sir, wouldn't win me many friends, but yes, I will sign any commission sent to this place.
Even if it's Frederick Douglass?
Well, I'll be. Stanton said he'd make you an officer.
At the conclusion of our meeting, a major in the Army, the papers are to follow.
Was he waiving a trial at the time? Because that's laying it on mighty thick, even for Edward and Stanton.
General Thomas is organizing colored regiments in the Mississippi Valley. I'm to help him recruit.
You know General Thomas?
I do not.
Well, Lorenzo Thomas had a desk job at the War Department. One of those men who approaches every task with a genius for organization and the charm of itching powder. Drove Stanton to distraction. Couldn't stand him, and he couldn't fire him. So he promoted him to general. Gave him very nice shoulder straps, but 2 days to clear out. Not that Thomas doesn't still irritate him, he just does it by way of telegraph. I'm not saying Stanton's trying to get rid of you, but I wouldn't gold-plate his motives if I were you. Still, it would be an impressive thing. Major Douglas, Army of the United States.
There's something else.
Go on.
Suppose I put on that uniform with those eagles shining on every button, go to the Mississippi Valley, and suppose in the course of those efforts I should be captured by the rebels. You know what Jefferson Davis has decreed.
Just a moment.
A Negro captured while fighting for the Union is a dead man. At the very least, sold into slavery, no matter his rank or condition.
I know what you're driving at, Douglas, and you wrong me.
You can pay them double, you can make every colored soldier a general, but if they have no protection as prisoners of war...
Protection? You're talking about retaliation. Killing Southern prisoners. Answering murder with murder.
Is that worse than answering murder with silence, promotions, and pay? Fine, I don't like it, but I understand. But when those black men that I recruited fought like heroes at Port Hudson, at Milliken's Bend, and at Fort Wagner, only to be shot or stabbed or beaten to death, and nothing, not a word, came from the President of the United States.
You don't want protection. You want revenge.
I want justice.
It's not justice to kill a man for something he didn't do.
Only because the prisoners you'd have to shoot might be rebels, but they're white. Isn't that it?
That is surely what the country will say. We knew Lincoln would get to this. Now white men are to be killed for
niggers. So our destiny lies in fighting for a country that will not fight for us.
Nonetheless, I have ordered it against every bit of my better judgment.
When?
10 days ago. Seems the Army agrees with you.
I didn't know.
You didn't ask. But word will be spread soon enough. For every soldier of the United States killed in violation of the laws of war, a rebel soldier shall be executed. And for everyone enslaved by the enemy, a rebel soldier shall be placed at hard labor until the other shall be released. How more killing will lead to less?
Can you guarantee that this policy will be carried out?
Well, why do you doubt it?
Because, Excellency, with all due respect, you have a penchant for compromise. That.
Never mind, I know what you think of me. You certainly filled your newspaper with it for all to read. The most sad and disheartening feature of our present political and military situation is not the various disasters experienced by our armies and navies, but the tardy, hesitating, vacillating policy of the President of the United States.
That's not precisely what I meant.
Looks damn precise to me. And here, an administration without a policy is an administration without brains, since while a thing is to be done, it implies a known way to do it. And he who professes his ability to do it, but cannot show how it is to be done, confesses his own imbecility.
I wasn't aware you had a subscription.
I know. But that's hardly the way to get me to buy one.
I wrote that when the emancipation was still a question.
Now you know the answer. Did I not do what I said I would do?
So far as it goes.
But I did it. You can say a lot about me, and almost everyone has. But no man can say that having once taken a position, I have contradicted it or retreated from it. I may go slow, and I may find roundabout ways to get there, because the country is not always at my elbow, but I get there.
In the meantime, people suffer.
And you needn't lecture me on suffering. I take nothing away from yours. But there are dispatches on this table that would make you shudder. I read them every day. I would drop every bit of it if I could. Now I have issued my order, and I expect it to be obeyed. If you find that tardy and hesitating, I'm sorry, but I can only go as far and as fast as the people of this country will let me.
That's not leadership.
It is in a democracy. Understand something. The suffering of any soldier cuts me to the core. But there can be no progress where colored soldiers are concerned until the country feels the same way. Awful as it is, the people need to be moved by the suffering and the gallantry of Negro troops as they were at Antietam or Shiloh. Now, I did not send your volunteers into battle intending for them to be butchered afterwards.
But it happened.
And would it were not so. But having happened, in the cause of bringing the country along, those men at Fort Wagner, Milliken's Bend, Port Hudson, yes, I read all the reports about those too. They became necessary sacrifices to that end.
So that's it. They died to make a point.
Not at all. But if there is a point to be made, is it not one that you would make yourself? Do you ever wonder if perhaps God, who gives us so much position, prominence, power, to affect so many others, also gives us such heartache, just as a caution?
For what?
I don't know. I simply wonder.
Perhaps not as a caution, but a reminder that nothing we do is for ourselves alone. It cannot be.
Mr. Douglas, that is at the heart of everything I do. But much as I would wish it, I cannot simply decree that the world be what we want it to be.
But you have the power to move it.
Even at that, your newspaper, you call it the Douglas Monthly?
Yes,
Somewhat lacking in grandeur, isn't it?
New York Times was taken.
Fair enough.
What? I mean to say what I believe is true, and my name on the nameplate is the testimony that I am both free and responsible in saying it.
And that, my friend, is the difference between us, between your job and mine. My name is not on the nameplate of this country. It's not even on the front door of this house. When I act, it is with half the freedom and twice the responsibility.
Yet, you proclaimed emancipation, and the world shook. All I am saying, don't let it be a sufficiency and an ending. Let it be a beginning.
I thought you rejoiced in it.
Of course I did, but you know perfectly well emancipation is not abolition. Henceforth free in Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi. Still in chains in Maryland and Delaware and Kentucky. You freed the slaves in all the places you don't control and left them alone in all the places you do.
Because I had no standing to issue that proclamation except as a military measure to weaken the rebellion. I would not take back a word of it, but I was on awful thin ice.
And after the war is over, what then? Abandon it by the side of the road with all the other useless equipment?
How about we win the war first, and then see what happens?
No, you must see it through. Slavery must be eliminated from every foot of American soil.
You want me to make this an abolition war?
That is exactly what it is.
I have never said that.
You should say it.
It's
Wow.
a war for the Union.
You know the reason for this war. The rebels have told us.
They have told us it is about the rights of states.
Excellency, if I remove my shirt, I could show you what rights they mean. The right of trafficking in souls of men, scourging women, and selling innocent children. The right of chains, auction blocks, branding irons, and eternal degradation. It's about slavery, pure and simple. That may prick your conscience, but it flayed my skin.
Don't mistake me. I have always hated slavery.
Have you?
I know. I've said some things about races in the past that I'm sure you'd fault me for. But if slavery isn't wrong, then nothing's wrong.
Then why?
I took an oath to defend the Constitution, and I don't believe you should take an oath just to get power and then break the oath in using that power.
What about the Declaration of Independence? All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator.
Nobody believes in the Declaration more than I do, Mr. Douglas. Nobody. But I swore to uphold the law, and the Constitution is the law.
But the Declaration is the prophecy. You cannot read the letter of one without the light of the other.
So you're a prophet of abolition now, like John Brown.
He was a martyr.
He was a madman.
He was my friend.
Your friend?
From the night I met him after I lectured in Massachusetts, we had a private conversation, and even on that night, his eyes burned right through me to a place only he could see. We talked for hours, year after year, at his home, at my home, about the blow he would strike for freedom. When that time came, he set out for Harper's Ferry. He implored me, "Come with me, Douglas. I will defend you with my life." I said no. Part of me still regrets it.
You're very fortunate. John Brown made a very bad end.
But he made a very good beginning.
He likely provoked this war.
As I said,
You wanted it to happen?
with all my soul. If the slave power chose to start a war, it would end with their destruction. And in that fire, we would all be born anew. John Brown knew that. You call him a madman. But 4 years later, this nation has his madness. Freedom is coming, and you can guide it or be dragged along with it, but you cannot stop it. You are but the hands on the clock. God is the timekeeper.
Even if I could decree it, even if every Negro was somehow free tomorrow, why in the blazes would they want to remain in this country?
Oh, I know. You told that fine delegation of black men you had in here, without you living among us, there would be no war. As if the cause of horse thievery is the horse. So why not move to a nice tropical climate?
Mr. Douglas, I would not force a single person to leave. But there are a lot of people willing to pay your way out. Hell, there's a fellow spending $200,000 right now setting up a black colony in Haiti.
Oh my God, we have lived by your side for 2 centuries, and you are as ignorant of us as ever.
New York City, Douglas, black men and women hung from lampposts. And that was in the North. Why not simply go and save yourselves the trouble?
Because our sweat and blood are mixed into this earth every bit as much as yours. Because every stripe on my back testifies to my right to be here. The grave of my child testifies to it. Because my sons fight America's battles now, and who fights America's battles may claim America as his country, and have that claim respected. Because we love this country, we believe in this country, and we are not leaving this country.
An abolition war.
You said it yourself. This nation cannot exist, half slave and half free.
Best thing ever said by a man trounced at the polls. The people still must be led to it.
Then lead them.
I could use your help. I know you don't always approve of my methods, but we are on the same side after all. And having a colored officer on that side, you'd be the first. What do you say?
It would mean closing my newspaper.
I understand.
I don't think you do. 16 years I've published God knows how many words. It's where I learned to think.
Well, there's a law practice I know of that's had to do without a partner for a few years now. But I imagine there'll be plenty of work for both of us when this is over. I can't tell you what to do. You must decide where you can do the most good. If Stanton sends me that commission, I'll sign it. Will you take it?
All right.
All right!
Thank you, Excellency.
My pleasure. I'm just hoping I haven't completely tarnished whatever opinion you may have had of this office.
Not at all.
And believe me, I know how quickly the majesty fades once you've been inside that door. It always has. There used to be a joke when I was first in politics. Why is President Tyler like an ass?
I don't know.
Because he is an ass. Never come to Washington without calling on me, you hear?
It's August, 1 year later. In the previous November, Lincoln had delivered the Gettysburg Address. The commission that had been offered to Douglas last August did not come to pass. In this third year of the war, the South, though greatly weakened, was still hanging on. The casualties on both sides have been horrific. Lincoln is caught between two factions. One side, wanting to make peace with the South, believes that the Emancipation Proclamation goes too far, while the other side feels that the president has not pushed abolition with sufficient vigor. President Lincoln has invited Douglas to Washington to discuss a plan.
Ah, Mr. Douglas.
Mr. President.
They let you in? Good. I thought it would be better than enduring the circus out there in the hall. It's good to see you again. I hope you haven't been waiting too long. I'm afraid I was detained at the War Department. So many dispatches coming in, and the poor telegraph operators, as you can see. They're overwhelmed.
You carry your papers in a hat?
An old habit from my circuit riding days. Keep my office on top of my head. Sometimes I wish I could make the contents disappear, like those magician fellows. Perhaps pull something wondrous out of it. But alas, I'm sorry, what was I talking about?
You were detained.
Ah, yes, my apologies.
You must find that stick useful for keeping your callers at bay.
No, I avoid that mess. I come in through the basement and the back stair. Now my wife has got it in her head that I will be assassinated on the walk next door. So now I go with a bodyguard and a cane. It's like putting up a couple of bars when the fence is down all around, but it makes her happy. And you? Your journey was a good one?
Fine.
Your sons, how are they?
Tolerable.
Well, I appreciate your coming. I wasn't sure you would.
Neither was I.
I suppose I can understand that, Mr. Douglas. I believe I owe you an apology. I know you never got that commission.
I don't need an explanation.
Yes, you do. Apparently, Mr. Stanton decided, after making inquiries, that the officer corps simply would not accept you, and that was better for all concerned.
Of course. I hope you'll convey my gratitude for replacing their discomfort with my humiliation.
Yeah. Well, have you resumed your newspaper?
No?
Well, I apologize for that as well. Sorry about the noise from those rifles firing. Had I remembered today would be Butcher's Day, I'd have found a better time or a better place.
Butcher's Day?
That's what they call it. Execution Day for Army criminals and deserters. You wouldn't think the sun would carry across the river. But on these quiet summer days...
Tell me, are any of those rifles aimed at Confederate prisoners?
I did not ask you here to discuss that.
I didn't ask to come here at all. But if you want to explain something, explain that. Fort Pillows was overrun 4 months ago. The black men who survived shot down in cold blood.
It was a tragedy.
It was a massacre. You promised me a year ago.
What do you want me to do, Mr. Douglas? Wrestle? No holds barred? Winner take all?
If that's the only way to keep from getting absolutely nothing.
Then you'd best roll up your sleeves and spit. Because I'm not so far removed from the prairie to keep from throwing you if I have to.
I'm not going to try you.
Well, good.
Forgive me, but you don't seem well.
I did have a touch of the smallpox at the end of the year. All those folks outside who want things from me, I finally had something I could give to all of them. Turned out I gave it to Mr. Johnson instead.
Your colored man?
It killed him. I'm fine. I just have a lot on my mind, that's all.
Mr. Lincoln, why did you ask me here?
Because I still need your help, Mr. Douglas.
Then I have to tell you, if you want me to be involved in your re-election...
And if I did, what would your answer be?
I am for the man who stands for complete elimination of slavery in every part of the United States.
And you don't think I stand for that?
I think that for every truth you utter, you have a qualification. For every principle you lay down, you have an exception. What happened to opening their eyes?
You know, I took a little trip to Gettysburg last fall. I said a few words. Maybe you heard about it.
Yes, I did. It was eloquent and heartfelt.
Thank you.
And not a word about abolition.
Well, just maybe if you spent half as much time listening as you do talking, you might have noticed all men are created equal. I I said that in the first damn line. And new birth of freedom in the last one. Now, what do you think I was talking about?
I think you didn't want to offend your white audience by actually saying it, is what I think.
Well, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And by the way, there are a hell of a lot of white men in that cemetery who died for those very words. You might respect that.
Mr. President, you have had the opportunity to free this entire country from a crime matchless in history, yet you continue to bend in the face of politics, everlasting politics.
Well, you aren't so far above everlasting politics yourself. So, John C. Fremont. You're a man, huh? Him and his little third-party ploy. Oh, yes, I have my informants. I am not the new seat at the poker table, my friend. And you will have to have much better cards if you want to play in this game.
General Fremont is selfless in the cause of abolition.
Selfless. It's his greatest regret in life that there already is a God. Only thing bigger than Fremont's self-estimation is his total incompetence. No, sir, it'll be me against General McClellan. But I think you knew that. I think you just picked a clumsy way to force my hand, that's all.
Careful. You make it sound like a black man's got nowhere else to go.
Me or General McClellan? You sure you want to sit this one out? Besides, you're already involved in my re-election. Surely you know that the biggest threat to the nation is no longer famine, sword, and fire, but race mixing. Excuse me, miscegenation.
Miscegenation? Is that even a word?
It is now, and on the lips of a lot of people for whom a 5-syllable word is a good week's work. To help them along, the other party has graciously put out a little campaign publication describing my official policy of forcing blacks and whites to mix. The president suggests that the white man should love the Negro better than anyone except a relative. And where such love existed, he might possibly become a relative. And here, you'll appreciate this.
When the war is over, the brave Othellos of the South will come north to claim their fair Desdemonas.
That's very literary. Let me read some more here. Mr. Lincoln is as much an aider and abettor of miscegenation as he has been of emancipation. And if proof is needed, here's Frederick Douglass, received at the White House like a gentleman. How do you like being used against me?
It's disgusting. You should tell them if they have any honor at all, they must repudiate such filth.
I could even fling mud back at them until we were all covered in it. Or I could just invite you here again and let that be the answer. We're hitched, my friend, whether you like it or not. So we might as well make the most of it. I ask you here because I need your advice.
You have all manner of advisors. What can I possibly tell you?
You tell me the truth, however disagreeable it is. That's a rare quality around here, believe me. Fact is, last time you were here, you were right about a great many things.
You didn't think so then.
I know, but I don't think much of a man who's not wiser today than he was yesterday, and that includes me. Pay and conditions are improved, and colonization, well, that was indeed a humbug. That colony in Haiti was a disaster. Half of them died, and I had to send a ship to bring the other half home.
Home?
Home. You were right about that above all. And that's why I'm going to lose this election, with or without you.
You can't be sure of that.
Quite sure. Barring some miracle, which I think would have revealed itself by now, I will be beaten in November, and badly so. You were very angry when I told you that some sacrifices are necessary. So you may take some satisfaction in knowing that I will be one such myself. I am now accused of turning down an offer of peace and extending the war solely for the Negro.
You don't believe the South genuinely wants peace?
Oh, hell no. They've just got me in their sights. They know the country's tired of war. My God, this year, the wilderness, Cold Harbor, we lost 40,000 men in less than a month. Grant's bogged down at Petersburg. Sherman can't take Atlanta. The rebels dangled peace talks out there as bait. I told them, you want to talk, we'll talk, as long as you restore the whole Union and abandon slavery. Next thing you know, Lincoln turns down peace to fight for the colors, at which the other party says, well, we'll give you what you want, no conditions at all. And they're popping corks in Richmond because a war they started is now my fault, because I didn't end it.
There must be some way out.
There is. Just accept their offer, lay down the guns, sort out slavery afterwards. It would undercut my opponents, give people on the fence a reason to jump down on my side.
And it would sound like everything you've ever said about freedom and liberty was simply sticking your finger in the political wind, doing your best to save not the country, but Abraham Lincoln. Don't you dare compromise on that.
Well, well, you have the makings of a politician after all. Don't worry, I reached the same conclusion myself. No point in doing something completely wrong just to earn a few more years to do something right. If the people are through with me, so be it.
You say that so easily.
Not at all. It's like eating flat irons. You cannot know the gnawing to have this office until you've been here. And I'm sure it's just base common pride. But I do desire to take it one more time to finish the job. Some days it damn near kills me. Then I think of the alternative. Well, you'll see. President McClellan will do with the government what he did with the Army. Nothing. But it will look damn good doing it. The judgment of the people must prevail in all cases. But it's a bitter thing to come this far, see the promised land, and not enter it.
Not even Moses was permitted to cross over.
Well, neither did God say enjoy the view because you're going back to Egypt in the morning. If I'm going to go down, I want to go down doing something big. I need your advice about getting something done before November.
You mean before March?
No, I lose this election. It's McClellan's country the day after. Even if I'm here, he's at the haberdashers. Anything I put forward will be completely ignored. What I have in mind, I have 3 months to do it. I know you have your doubts about emancipation.
I don't doubt its importance. I merely say that it's the beginning of a journey.
Well, soon it'll be the end of the road. The President's proclamation doesn't say we the people or we the Congress. It says I, Abraham Lincoln. It's a half-minute's work to write I, George McClellan, take it all back. He could do it between the oath and the speech if he's so inclined. But until that time, the slaves in the South are legally free. and they are not coming across our lines as rapidly as I had hoped.
What do you think happens? You issue a proclamation and suddenly it goes by telegraph to every home and hovel in America? And most of it will be rumors. And no slave will stake his life on that.
Then we must get to them, one way or another. You understand? If our lines can't move, then the slaves must move.
My God, do you know what you're talking about?
Yes! Bring as many of them inside our lines as possible, as quickly as possible. Now, how do we do it?
We? You're not asking me to organize this.
You're the only man I know who has fled for his life. You might have some notion of how it might be done.
Mr. Lincoln, this isn't a stolen pass or some kind of underground railroad. This would mean raiding parties, a military operation.
Your friend, Mrs. Tubman, she led a raid last year with some of our troops, South Carolina.
She brought out 800 from one place. You're talking about hundreds of thousands from all across the South.
I don't say we could get that many, of course not. But we can get a damn sight more than 800. Look, we have armies in Virginia, North Carolina, Mississippi. If we use them as starting points...
What does your cabinet say about this?
They don't know.
They don't know?
Considering that confidential information around here has all the solidarity of the Swiss cheese, I prefer it that way. In the meantime, I'm interested in what you have to say.
Don't do it.
Why not?
Why not? You're talking about going behind enemy lines and inciting mass slave escapes. You're talking about the worst nightmare of every Southerner. Unchained Negroes roaming the countryside, perhaps exacting centuries of revenge. And you're talking about the entire thing being authorized by the President of the United States.
Not exactly a platform for me to run on, you think?
It would make miscegenation seem like a bed of roses. It will confirm everything your enemies say about you.
I can't make decisions based on what my enemies say. It's my judgment that we can do right and speed the end of the war by collapsing the South from within. Think of it, Douglas. Every slave who escapes, a loss to the rebellion and a gain to us. Imagine them not just freed, but armed and ready to return to the fight. Imagine the information they possess about armies, supplies, and the land itself.
You have no idea who you sound like.
John Brown.
His body may be a moldering in the grave, but his soul is marching right through this room.
He was trying to start a war. I'm trying to end one.
If he had made it out of Harper's Ferry, you'd have seen what he really had in mind. He called it the subterranean passway. Squads of men sent down to Virginia, 5 miles apart, armed and provisioned, and willing to do whatever was necessary. As slaves were freed, the squads would push further and further south like a funnel cloud, the whole thing growing and churning until it was too powerful to be withstood, blasting slavery mile by mile until nothing but the wreckage remained. Every slave a loss to the rebellion and a gain to us. And to start, 100,000 weapons at the Harper's Ferry Armory.
Then what?
That's the point. It didn't matter. He just wanted to start the fire, burn it all took walking into a perfect steel trap, well, that's why I said no.
You didn't just say no. You went to Canada or so, I've learned. Fled the country for years, didn't you?
Because the state of Virginia would have hung me for the crime of knowing him. John Brown was willing to die for the slave. I chose to live for the slave.
You chose?
My daughter died while I was gone. Is that punishment enough for you?
But you wanted him to take that chance anyway. Why him and not me?
Because John Brown wasn't Abraham Lincoln. Do you understand?
He was your friend.
And so are you. You were right about something. What we want, you and I, if we want it to last, how we get it matters. And this plan of yours.
Is there a perfect steel trap waiting for me?
Not just for you, for all of us. Say you succeed. Thousands of slaves streaming north. You out John Brown, John Brown. Go further. Say you win the election. You win the war.
Please say I do.
Everyone in bondage is thenceforth and forever free. Then what? What do you mean for them to do with their freedom?
I would be happy if they would do even a fraction of what you've done with yours.
Don't fool yourself. There hasn't been a day in 25 years where I haven't glanced over my shoulder to see what might be behind me. Runaway slaves never stop running, and freedmen can never look forward if some part of them is always looking back. What is their status? Are they citizens or not?
That is a very difficult question.
And that is why you cannot do this, not until you have an answer, because set free is not made free.
You're telling me that one question should stop me from doing everything I can to break their chains? I'm sorry, I do not understand.
Well, it seems the witness must lead the lawyer. There are two ideas that rule slave power. Slavery is right, and slaveholders are the superior class. Everything, all their politics, religion, laws, revolve around that. If you are in that class, you may break bones, burn flesh, what you will. But there is one thing a slaveholder will never do if he can help it: destroy the very source of his wealth. You see 1 million people in bondage, they see $1 billion in property. Now, Covey broke me and he fought me, but there's one thing he didn't do.
He didn't kill you.
If he had, old master would have killed him, because I was worth something alive and nothing dead. If you succeed in inciting slave rebellions, you will unleash a rage against the Negro that will not abate in a century. It will be transmitted down the generations as a sacred animosity. And because we are no longer property, we will be at the mercy of a force which you will have turned upon us. And I tell you, there will be such rage in return.
Your people would go that far?
If society marks us out as plunder for their preservation, then why are we not justified in plundering for ours? There is one thing that would induce me to help you with this. And even then,
if it's within my power.
Well, that will be the question. You can free every slave, but if they don't have equality before the law...
Equality? You mean the right to vote?
Complete, absolute, unqualified. I want your promise that you will say it and work for it, win or lose.
Good God, man. Women don't even have the right to vote, and they're already citizens.
Don't justify one wrong with another. We must have it, and I mean women as well as men.
You already have it yourself, don't you? In New York? States decide that question.
You see, qualifications and exceptions. Now it's states' rights once again.
You want to refight this war?
Of course not.
Then, painful as it may be to you, we must make some provision for the rebels too. I'll go at them like a bulldog as long as I can, and chew and choke as much as possible. But when we're done, if we're ever to be the United States of America, we've got to let them up easy.
That's not letting them up easy. That's building them a ladder to heaven. If you don't give us the means to protect ourselves through the law, you merely remove the shackles, clean and polish them, and put them right back on.
And what if I can't deliver that? What if no one can in our lifetime? Or ever? What's to become of this country?
Then you will refight this war in ways you can scarcely imagine. The old Union is dead, Mr. President. The first shot at Sumter killed it. But until you can say what the new Union means, aside from some colors on a map, then there will be no Union. And until the Negro has his rightful place in that Union, we will none of us have a future. So you tell me, what's the country you want to see when this catastrophe is over?
It will take politics the likes of which you have never seen. And that's if by some miracle I win. I lose. You may be extracting a promise from an out-of-work lawyer. Doesn't get much worse than that.
I'll take that chance if you will.
Millions of Negroes with ballots in their hands.
Freed, armed, and returned to the fight for our country.
Well, the woodcutter's maxim is, hew to the line of right till the chips fly in your face. You have my word. I will do whatever I can.
And I will hold you to that. You can be very sure.
I expect nothing less. In the meantime, do we do this or not?
You will need someone in charge who answers to you and you alone. You must have the means and the power to form the squads of men who will go behind the lines. And these men must know the country well, the terrain, the people, the way of life, if they're going to conduct those slaves to freedom.
Go on.
And once across our lines, those freed men and women must be maintained.
Of course.
I don't just mean fed and watered and put into camps like livestock. I mean given the means to build a life, honest wages and honest work. They will never be respected until they respect themselves, and they will never respect themselves until they can live respectably.
Will you take charge of this?
No. The people still need my voice. I intend to use it. But I will find you someone you can trust. And let the chips fly.
Events have prevailed. General Sherman took Atlanta and marched to the sea. Sentiment swung behind Lincoln, and he was easily reelected. He invited Douglas to attend his inauguration.
At this second appearing to take the oath of the presidential office, there is less occasion for an extended address than there was at the first. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. To strengthen, perpetuate, and extend this interest was the object for which the insurgents would rend the Union, even by war, while the government claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial enlargement of it. Fervently do we pray that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continue, until all the wealth piled up by the bondsman, 250 years of unrequited toil shall be sunk, and every drop of blood drawn with the lash shall be paid for by another drawn with the sword. As was said 3,000 years ago, so still must it be said again. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and for his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
When the inaugural reception was given afterwards, I decided to attend. The policeman at the door had a different opinion, but a passing gentleman intervened, and I was admitted to the East Room, where he recognized me even before I had reached him.
Here comes my friend Douglas.
Excellency.
I saw you in the crowd. My address. How did you like it?
Sir, there are people waiting. I mustn't detain you.
Nonsense. There isn't a man in the country whose opinion I value more.
Mr. President, it was a sacred effort.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Very glad indeed. We'll talk later.
We never did. Tardy, hesitating, vacillating. But it was the beginning of a promise to be kept. Except for one man in the crowd who did hear him, an actor, and for whom it was the last straw. The rest is well known. In the summer, a package arrived at my home in Rochester. His favorite walking stick, sent from Mrs. Lincoln, a token of kind consideration which she felt her husband held for me personally. I shall retain it for as long as I live. And for my friend Lincoln, viewed from the heights of abolition, he seemed cold, dull, and indifferent. But measuring him against the ground of a stricken country, he was zealous, radical, and determined. A good man, take him for all in all, who learned wisdom from war and would have learned it from peace. And were he living, would go with those who go the furthest in the cause of equality. But this is not an ending. The songs of my bondage follow me still, though better angels have arisen, to many chords of memory remain forgotten or out of tune. We have been asked to remember with equal admiration those who fought for slavery and those who fought for freedom and justice. May my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth if I ever forget the difference. Thus I say, as I believe he would say, judge no one by their complexion, but by their loyalty. Wherever there is a patriot, north or south, black or white, man or woman, fighting for all, hail them as a citizen, as kin, as a brother or sister beloved. The unfinished work remains. The sacrifices must be ours, upon us. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
It was magnificent.